So what's happening is they've U-turned on mandated digital ID. So it's not coming in, we win. Not the case in any sense. What we're dealing with in Britain is far more sneaky and through the back door.
Hello and welcome back to our channel. In this video, Montgomery Toms speaks at the European Parliament about his concerns over the push for digital ID in Britain. We also explore the principles of individual liberty and limited government based on consent of the governed. Let's get into the details.
I was here actually, digital ID had recently been announced in Great Britain, and I briefly touched on it and explained how, we're going to be fighting it and we won't be going along with it. Now, Keir Starmer, our, great Prime Minister, went forward with, I think at the time it was his 13th U-turn, and said they're no longer going to bring it in. But I can tell you, there's absolute nonsense. And it's interesting because listening to other speakers here talking about all the things that I was talking about when I was last here about, mission creep and social credit systems. Well, the mandated aspect of it coming through the front door and being so obvious that it's here is actually the easiest kind of way of looking at it. Because I can tell you from the experience of what we're dealing with in Britain, it's far more sneaky and through the back door. So what's happening is they've U-turned on mandated digital ID. So it's not coming in, we win. Not the case in any sense. There are multiple ways that they are bringing this through the back door. So I'll give you a few. For example, if you're a company director in England now, or Britain, you are required to sign up to something called One Login. Now, that all sounds nice on the face of it, but quite simply, that is a centralized login portal for you to be able to run a limited company. You won't be able to be self-employed unless you sign up to One Login. Now, One Login is incredibly insecure in the sense that it's based on foreign Romanian technology originally. It's been red team tested, so they've put it through basically a process where they put friendly hackers in there to see if they can break in. Lo and behold, guess what? They broke in without even being noticed. So that's what our data's being held on. It goes even more sinister than that. Digital veteran cards, digital driving licenses, all things that at the moment are optional. But like we saw during the lockdowns, like we saw during COVID times, we didn't technically have vaccine passports mandated in every single location in England or Scotland, Wales, etc. But some venues chose to have vaccine passports in the same sense that venues may turn around and say, okay, well, you've got to use only card here and you can't use cash. Now, technically, they've not implemented that by law, but naturally speaking, people are going to be forced and gradually kind of edged in the direction of just going, well, it's more convenient, as we've seen touched on down this panel, about how it's more convenient, and that is, convenience is the word they always try to use. They use it during lockdown. Another more concerning one. The Children Wellbeings and Schools Bill is another thing that they're pushing through. This is essentially where they say that if you want to homeschool your children, they will have to have a digital ID. And what they're doing is they're automatically transferring NHS numbers into lifelong IDs for children. Get them young, right? And then that way they grow into it. And what is homeschooling? Oh, well, it's you escaping from state indoctrination, if you ask me, and having the autonomy and freedom to bring up your children the way you see fit. Of course, cracks down on freedom. The reason I'm mentioning these very specific examples is we've seen a so-called U-turn. Okay, so we've been through the process already of them implementing it or trying to, saying it's going to be mandated for your right to work. But they U-turned on it, and I can tell you it's still very much here. So it's the responsibility of lots of people that are obviously that don't live in Britain to really do some thorough research as to what their government is pushing through the back door, and it's far more sinister and far more sneaky. And obviously there is a bigger picture. In London we've got, specifically London is being rolled up and down Britain. We've got facial recognition rolled out up and down the city. If you've committed an offence and they're looking for you, they will scan thousands upon thousands upon thousands of face to pick up a few wanted people. Now, it's all about the motivation. For example, at some point, I'm sure I'm going to be wanted, right? I'm under investigation for being offensive, in a public space. I could walk into London. They want me for committing what they would claim to be a hate crime. They use facial recognition. They scan me. They connect it to my digital ID. It links into that same idea of mission creep, social credit system. London is likened to China in the level of surveillance that we have. We're more surveilled in London than any other city in Europe. We are really... England leads on many things, right? But we're leading on this one, I think. And that's not exactly a very good thing, right? We've got intelligence services, things that we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. 77th Brigade is another example, literally an investigation unit that used to track our tweets, our posts during the lockdown days. If they had a digital ID, if they had access to every inch of information in our life, God knows what kind of power that's going to deliver to the state. They've got files on us, databases, and as I reiterate, lessons from COVID, vaccine passports, we've seen it already. That's what I mentioned last time I was here. It was the blueprint for exactly what we're seeing now.
Does Britain feel like it's slipping into authoritarianism under Starmer and Labour? The push to cancel jury trials, which is an essential part of British democracy, free speech crackdown, which includes Islamophobia laws, and the biggest one that will bring everything together for any authoritarian regime is a digital ID. Every decision that the Labour government has made since getting into power has been against the British people. Can you imagine a people paying their taxes and the government salaries, and those taxes are being used to take away the people's freedoms? Could digital ID be more about tracking your every move and enabling greater surveillance rather than just identifying you or making things easier as the government suggests? This is not how a democratic nation should operate. The citizens of a country should be able to trust their government. There can be no trust when freedoms are being taken away. In times like these, we need to return to core leadership principles. That's exactly why these leadership principles matter so much right now. Individual liberty means we keep personal sovereignty over our labor, resources, time, and choices through voluntary agreements, without unnecessary external compulsion. In a sense, people are best positioned to judge their own interests, innovate, take risks, and create value when left largely free to do so. Limited government based on the consent of the governed means any expansion of authority has to rest on genuine, broad-based agreement rather than top-down imposition. Governments stay accountable, restrained, and funded only for purposes that align with individual freedoms instead of undermining them. When government steps beyond protecting rights and enforcing contracts into building tools for broad control or surveillance, it crosses the line and erodes the very foundations of a free market and a free society. Stand up for individual liberty and limited government based on consent of the governed. Make your voice heard. Any expansion of state power must prove it protects freedoms rather than take them away. Hold leaders accountable to these principles so Britain stays a nation where people direct their own lives and government serves the people, not the other way around. Do you believe that push for digital ID is for surveillance purposes? If you have benefited in any way from this video, please subscribe, like, share, and be sure to leave us a comment.